Hey guys, tonight we drift into one of those corners of the world that feels like it's been designed to make you slightly nervous even while you're curled up under a blanket. You probably won't survive this, but don't worry, I mean that in the most sleep-friendly way possible. You trudge along imaginary waves with me, peering over the edge of the map at a place the cartographers whispered about, laughed nervously at, and occasionally just left blank: the Bermuda Triangle, stretching roughly between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. It's an area of ocean that has collected more headlines about disappearances than your high school lost and found ever did. Ships, planes, and even curious cargo occasionally vanish, leaving behind only waves and questions. You might picture a mist rolling in, or a compass spinning in lazy circles, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. You still need to breathe, and maybe sip that cup of tea you've been neglecting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and local time. I'm curious if the triangle feels far or suspiciously close wherever you are. As you ease into the story, imagine the sun shimmering off the gentle swell of turquoise water, the kind of water that makes you wish you were snorkeling rather than imagining ghosts of vanished vessels. Historians still argue whether these vanishings are purely coincidental, and you can almost hear the debate echoing across decades in the quiet hum of naval offices and university corridors. Oddly, some sailors swear that the air smells different. They're salty, yes, but tinged with an indefinable metallic edge. Fringe enthusiasts suggest it's evidence of underwater energy anomalies. You probably won't survive this, sure, but that's half the fun of letting your mind wander through such a myth-laden ocean. You imagine Flight 19 taking off into a pink dawn, your teeth lightly tapping from nerves, or maybe just the gentle Asimov thinking about lost compasses. Somewhere, a historian coughs, arguing the line between myth and record-keeping is blurrier than you think. And now, as you settle further into the couch or bed, picture the triangle not as a mere stretch of ocean, but as a living, breathing entity that has quietly claimed curiosity after curiosity. That sound you hear, maybe a fan, maybe the imagined creak of a ghost ship, is exactly why people keep glancing at nautical charts, wondering if that blank space really is just blank, or maybe it's a cosmic inside joke. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're here, you're awake enough to imagine, but relaxed enough to let the waves carry you. You float past that first eerie image of the triangle and find yourself staring at a series of lines and curves on old maritime charts, each one a faint echo of centuries of human curiosity and navigational ambition. Cartography confusion sets in almost immediately. Maps from the 16th century barely agreed on where land ended and sea began, let alone a vaguely triangular stretch of ocean that seemed determined to resist categorization. You trudge your fingers along the edges of these maps, imagining the ink smudging under the damp fingers of a sailor, or the candle smoke of a cartographer hunched over a desk. Historians still argue whether the Bermuda Triangle was ever officially recognized as a danger zone before the 20th century, or if it was simply a convenient narrative spun by journalists and insurance companies looking for dramatic flair. You probably won't survive this, but that's only because your imagination keeps flipping between reality and legend like a poorly tuned radio. Some maps place the vertices differently. Bermuda sometimes drifts closer to Florida, Puerto Rico slides a few degrees south, and the whole triangle shapeshifts depending on who's drawing it. Fringe enthusiasts claim that these inconsistencies hint at a secret underwater base or shifting magnetic anomalies, but mainstream historians shrug and point to simple human error and the poor surveying tools of the time. You imagine explorers in tiny wooden ships, compasses trembling as if they too were uncertain, their logs filled with cryptic notes about currents that feel wrong or fog that devours the horizon. Oddly, some anecdotes mention sailors feeling suddenly disoriented, or that time itself seemed to stretch in small pockets over the water. It's hard not to smirk at the notion, but then again, you've probably mislaid your watch more than once and wondered if hours had been stolen. Meanwhile, the quirky side of cartography surfaces. One obscure 18th century map depicts a sea monster in roughly the triangle's center, tentacles reaching toward shipping lanes. Some historians argue these were not believed literally, but were artistic warnings to inexperienced sailors, yet the image still lingers in your mind, oscillating between menace and whimsy. You trudge further into the story and picture how these early sailors, more reliant on wind and star charts than jeeps, must have felt passing through an area that would later gain a reputation for swallowing ships whole. Rogue waves were known even then, but sailors' logs often leave an uncomfortable space between the known and the mysterious, almost inviting imagination to drift in. As the sun sets on these mental charts, you imagine a compass spinning wildly, ink lines blurring, and sailors whispering about currents that seem to have minds of their own. Cartography confusion doesn't just confuse maps, it lingers in the mind, a subtle sense that the triangle is not just on paper, but somewhere between reality and your own slowly waking dream. You probably won't survive this, but let's keep going anyway, past maps and miscalculations, to where history starts collecting its first notable vanishings. You drift forward, letting the triangle's waves lap gently at the edges of your imagination, and suddenly you're amidst the first famous disappearances, stories that give the Bermuda Triangle its teeth. Flight 19 is the one that everyone remembers, 5 Navy bombers taking off from Fort Lauderdale in December 1945. Fading into the ocean like a secret swallowed by a pocket of fog. You probably won't survive this, but not physically, just mentally, as the sheer randomness of history presses in. The planes were supposed to follow a simple training route, yet radio reports became increasingly panicked, disjointed, and almost dreamlike, compasses spinning, directions contradicting themselves, pilots reporting strange haze. Historians still argue whether navigational error alone can explain what happened, or if some uncharted anomaly of the triangle was at play. Oddly, some of the more fringe accounts suggest Flight 19 wasn't lost at all, that the pilots may have experienced a temporary time loop, or magnetic distortion strong enough to warp their perception. You picture it now, 5 aircraft, their engines cutting through the pastel glow of dawn, then slowly vanishing, leaving only whispers in the salty breeze. You imagine rescuers combing the waves, finding debris that may have belonged to the planes, or maybe just driftwood that resembled parts of wings when seen from a distance. The official record mentions that a rescue plane sent after them also disappeared, adding a darkly comic layer to the story, like a magician's trick where the assistant disappears just as you start to clap. Other disappearances around this time include cargo ships and small private vessels, each vanishing with minimal trace. Some logs indicate sudden electrical failures, compasses swinging madly, and equipment that seemed to misbehave without explanation. Historians debate whether these incidents reflect genuine anomalies or simply the hazards of mid-20th century navigation in an unpredictable ocean. You probably won't survive this, but in a gentle, sleep-inducing way, as the mind toys with the overlap between human error and mystery. And then there's the fringe speculation: alien abductions, interdimension rifts, even secret military experiments, none of which hold much weight in mainstream discourse but add a playful shiver to the tale. You can almost hear the whispering voices of journalists, historians, and enthusiasts arguing across decades, each one staking a claim on what might have happened. The narrative of the triangle becomes a patchwork of fact, fear, and imagination, as you imagine the last radio signals fading into static, the waves carrying them away. The triangle feels alive, a quiet, patient observer waiting for the next curious soul to drift into its reach. You trudge alongside Flight 19, not in panic, but in slow, mesmerizing curiosity, letting the story fold gently into the rhythm of your breath. The vanished Flight 19 now drifts behind you in memory, and you find yourself thinking about the ships that never returned, the maritime cousins of those airborne mysteries. These aren't just vessels lost to storms, some disappear seemingly without explanation. Their crew lists frozen mid-journey, cargo manifest untouched, decks empty. You probably won't survive this, but in a curious, almost cozy sense, as your mind paddles through the quiet of ocean legends. Take for instance, the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy cargo ship that vanished in 1918 with 309 men aboard. No distress call, no wreckage conclusively identified. Historians still argue whether mechanical failure alone could account for such a complete disappearance, or if the triangle's currents, rogue waves, or some other unseen force conspired in silence. Fringe tales claim that the Cyclops was pulled under by a vortex or trapped in some temporal anomaly. Though these ideas have about as much credibility as the whispered ghost stories sailors pass in the galley, you imagine the decks empty, chairs rocking slightly as if invisible hands linger, and a fog rolling over the bow, soft enough to make you think it's morning mist but heavy enough to hint at secrets. Then there's the Carol Deering, a 5-masted schooner found mysteriously abandoned off Cape Hatteras in 1921. Its sails were still set, its logbooks intact, and yet no soul remained. Quirky fringe enthusiasts insist pirates, sea monsters, or even alien collectors were responsible. And while you probably won't survive this, you are safe enough on the couch to enjoy imagining all the possibilities. It's not only the big ships, either. Smaller craft vanish too, sometimes leaving behind lifeboats bobbing innocently in turquoise water. Historians debate whether these are due to sudden storms, navigational miscalculations, or a combination of both. After all, the Atlantic can be unpredictable, but the fact that people continue to report compass anomalies or electrical failures in these same waters adds a layer of intrigue that refuses to let go. You picture sailors scratching their heads, perhaps writing notes in a log, trying to explain why their bearings went wild or why the engine hiccuped just before silence. Even the stories of cargo washing ashore or never washing ashore hint at mysteries your brain likes to dwell in. You trudge past imagineses of ghostly silhouettes on the horizon, playful dolphins who seem to watch silently, and the odd anecdote of crew members who swore the water smelled metallic and smelled like ozone, hinting at some energy invisible to everyone else. You probably won't survive this, but the blend of fact and fiction, the Cyclops, the Carol at Deering, and countless other vessels makes your mind wander gently, letting the triangle's quiet, insistent pull lull you into deeper curiosity. The ships vanish, but their stories float, waiting for you to drift along with them. The ocean stretches endlessly as you drift further into thought, and you can't help but wonder whether the Bermuda Triangle's secrets are simply natural forces we barely understand. Weather versus whirlpool, rogue waves and sudden storms, all converge here like an unseen orchestra. You probably won't survive this, but in the sense that your mind will be gently tugged toward the unknown, lulled by the rhythmic roll of imagined waves. Hurricane patterns occasionally sweep across this region with brutal efficiency, swallowing ships and planes alike. Yet there are accounts of vessels disappearing under skies that seemed perfectly calm. Historians still argue whether these weather anomalies alone can explain the sheer number of incidents attributed to the triangle. Rogue waves, sometimes towering over 80 feet, can appear without warning, and sailors of old would have had no way to anticipate them. You imagine the bow of a ship rising, the mast bending under the sudden weight of invisible power, the crew gripping anything solid while the world tilts violently. Fringe enthusiasts suggest that whirlpools or underwater methane gas eruptions could momentarily reduce water density, causing vessels to sink faster than physics would normally allow. You probably won't survive this, but not because of the waves. You're safely wrapped in blankets, imagining it with a mix of fascination and gentle apprehension. There's also the curious phenomenon of water swaps. Tornado-like columns of water shooting skyward from the ocean's surface, spinning so quickly they seem to touch the clouds. Some old-time sailors claimed these spouts could pull entire decks under in minutes, though most modern researchers are skeptical, attributing losses to more mundane explanations like storm surges. You can almost hear the whispers of the crew, nervously noting the horizon and joking about how the ocean clearly has a sense of humor, or a vendetta against those who dare cross it. Even calmer stretches of water are not free from mystery. Sudden fog banks, patches of unidentifiable slicks, and currents that appear to flow backward all play into the triangle's lore. Historians debate whether navigational errors caused by such phenomena account for the majority of vanishings, or if our need for stories simply amplifies normal maritime risk. You trudge through these ideas like stepping stones, each one slightly slippery, but safe enough to keep moving, letting the soft hum of the imagined ocean wash over you. There's a rhythm here: wind, wave, whisper of waves against hulls, the ocean reminding you gently that even in calm, mystery quietly persists. You shift your focus slightly, imagining the instruments aboard those doomed vessels, their needles quivering, dials spinning, lights flickering. Welcome to the realm of electronic oddities. Compass malfunctions are the bread and butter of Bermuda Triangle lore. And you probably won't survive this in the sense that your mind will drift deep into a maze of whirling instruments and unexplained phenomena. Pilots and sailors have reported compasses pointing wildly off course, even flipping back and forth like indecisive dance partners. Historians still argue whether these malfunctions stem from magnetic anomalies, equipment flaws, or just human misinterpretation. There are stories of radar screens suddenly going blank, of autopilot systems disengaging without calls, leaving crews scrambling as if the ship or plane had a mind of its own. Some fringe enthusiasts claim strong geomagnetic fields in the triangle can erase memories temporarily, leading to pilot confusion and crew disorientation. You picture a captain staring at a spinning compass, muttering under his breath, while a first mate glances nervously at gauges that refuse to settle. It's oddly comforting, imagining them as humans grappling with invisible forces rather than some malevolent entity lurking in the waves. You probably won't survive this, but not literally, just in your slowly waking sense of wonder. Electrical interference isn't limited to navigation alone. Anecdotes exist of radios crackling with voices that weren't there, of instruments responding to no apparent command, or autopilot systems plotting routes that seem almost playful in their unpredictability. Historians debate whether these stories are true anomalies or simply the product of stress and fear magnified in isolation at sea. And of course, the quirkier fringe tales suggest time itself bends briefly around the triangle, a notion that has no hard evidence but does give the imagination something to nibble on while drifting off. You can picture it now, a vessel gliding smoothly, suddenly surrounded by a strange hum. Compass needles twitching, electrical devices behaving as if sentient, and sailors pausing in mid-step, unsure if they should trust their instincts or the instruments they have relied on for years. You probably won't survive this, but it's a gentle kind of danger. A nudge rather than a shove, as your mind moves between the factual, the quirky, and the utterly unexplained. The triangle seems less like a physical location and more like a space where technology and mystery play endless hide and seek, letting you drift along comfortably, almost lulled into the next story. You let your imagination settle into the quieter hum of the triangle, where stories of alien intervention peak like distant stars. The idea that UFOs have some vested interest in the Bermuda Triangle might make you chuckle or shiver ever so slightly, and you probably won't survive this. If only because your mind is about to wander into the realm of gentle, sleep-friendly speculation. Fringe enthusiasts have long suggested that strange lights, inexplicable aerial maneuvers, and sudden disappearances could be the work of extraterrestrial observers. Historians still argue whether these claims are worth consideration, or if they are merely the modern evolution of sailors' ghost stories. You picture glowing orbs drifting over the water at night, hovering silently above vanished ships, like curious cats inspecting human folly. There are anecdotal accounts of pilots seeing strange lights move in ways defying conventional flight patterns, only to return to find compasses spinning and engines inexplicably cut. Mainstream science raises eyebrows and suggests lens flares, atmospheric reflection, or even mass hallucination. Yet the fringe insists there's more at play, some cosmic game we're not invited to understand. You probably won't survive this, but that's only because the mind's curiosity has a tendency to pull you further into the night than your eyes might prefer. The alien theory also extends to theories of abduction, though thankfully in this sleepy rendition, no one is actually harmed. You're safe on your couch, tea in hand. Supposed witnesses claim entire vessels were lifted or cloaked temporarily, only to reappear miles away, or never at all. Historians debate the plausibility, often pointing to misreporting, exaggeration, or the very human need for storytelling during unexplained events. You can almost hear a pilot quietly muttering to a co-pilot about the lights again, while the ocean below remains indifferent, stretching toward the horizon as if mocking human attempts to interpret it. Even as you picture these scenarios, there's a cozy rhythm in imagining advanced alien observers, silently noting our tiny dramas. You probably won't survive this, but in the sense of drifting deeper into storyland, lulled by speculation that is at once intriguing and harmless. The triangle, in this light, is less a menacing trap and more a stage where the improbable, the unexplained, and the fantastical mingle quietly. You trudge along the waves of possibility, gently nudged by curiosity. As the lights of imagination dance above the endless, rolling water, you continue drifting through the triangle's stories, and now time itself seems to bend, if only in your mind. Time warps and wormholes fringe ideas that suggest parts of the ocean may be sliding out of sync with the rest of the world hover quietly at the edge of plausibility. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your imagination is about to be gently tugged into impossible loops. Sailors have reported losing track of hours, clocks running erratically, and compasses pointing in contradictory directions. Historians still argue whether these accounts are misremembered stress responses or if they hint at something more elusive. Picture a small yacht drifting under a pale sunrise, and suddenly the same stretch of sky feels subtly different. Shadows fall oddly, colors seem shifted, and an hour can vanish in what feels like minutes. Fringe enthusiasts claim these are temporal pockets, a bubble in which time behaves strangely, perhaps stretching or contracting unpredictably. Mainstream researchers shrug, pointing to navigational errors, fatigue, or ocean currents that make a familiar coastline appear distorted. You probably won't survive this, but only in the delightful way that your mind gets lost in imagining subtle, imperceptible anomalies. A particularly quirky anecdote tells of a freighter crew noticing their chronometers all differing by minutes and hours, only to realize later that no one could account for the missing time. Some speculate that the Bermuda Triangle is a naturally occurring temporal lens, though no conclusive evidence exists. You imagine the crew quietly exchanging puzzled glances, murmuring about the clock trick while waves lap innocently against the hull, completely indifferent to human bewilderment. Historians debate whether these stories are literal experiences, exaggerated tales, or collective anxiety amplified by the triangle's infamous reputation. Even the thought of time folding gently over itself has a hypnotic quality. You probably won't survive this. Not in any physical sense, but in the sense that your imagination is stretching alongside invisible temporal ripples, lightly tugged into speculation and gentle wonder. The triangle becomes a place where minutes feel like hours, hours like moments, and the ocean, as always, waits patiently for the next ship, plane, or story to drift across its quiet, unknowable expanse. You trudge along, feeling the soft pull of mystery in your bones, letting the idea of time itself lull you ever deeper into this hypnotic drift. You step away from temporal oddities and drift toward something far more human: mistakes, hubris, and the occasional poor decision that has sent sailors and pilots into the triangle's embrace. Human error or hubris. Really, sometimes the ocean doesn't need ghosts or aliens, it just needs people to misread a chart or underestimate the waves. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your mind is about to wade through the slightly embarrassing, yet strangely compelling, catalogue of human folly. Historians still argue whether negligence, overconfidence, or simple miscalculation accounts for the bulk of triangle disappearances. Picture a captain who trusts his instincts over instruments, confident in his own seamshan, while a storm subtly gathers just over the horizon. The sun is glinting off the water, a false promise of calm, and you can almost hear the crew exchanging uneasy jokes about bad luck or cursed coordinates. Fringe enthusiasts argue that these overconfident choices amplify whatever natural anomaly is already present, but often it's just humans thinking they are more prepared than they really are. You probably won't survive this, not physically, but mentally, as the imagination starts tracing the thin line between skill and hubris. Some disappearances are oddly comedic when you think about them from afar. A small pleasure yacht loses radar contact because the captain thought he could eyeball it, or a seasoned navigator misreads a map under a sky streaked with illusions of light. Historians debate whether such accounts should be sensationalized or if they are merely the mundane truth dressed in dramatic retellings. You trudge alongside these stories, almost wincing at human stubbornness but also feeling a warm sense of amusement at our inability to fully respect the ocean's vastness. Even the largest vessels aren't immune. There are anecdotes of military ships under confident command suddenly caught in unexpected currents or rogue waves, and the crew left scrambling, instruments failing, decisions needing to be made in seconds. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that imagining the tension is enough to hold your attention and tug at a nervous giggle. The triangle, it seems, thrives not only on the unknown but also on the predictable flaws of human nature, quietly punishing arrogance while leaving stories floating in the waves for the curious to ponder. You drift along, softly reminded that sometimes the ocean's deadliest tricks are human-made or at least human-amplified. As you trudge along the waves of the triangle's lore, your thoughts drift downward below the surface, where speculation and imagination swim among sunken cities, submerged cities. The idea has a peculiar charm, a mix of Atlantis-style fantasy and oceanic mystery. You probably won't survive this, but only because your mind is about to wander over coral-encrusted ruins and imagined streets beneath the waves. Some claim that vanished cities, lost civilizations, or ancient technology might explain disappearances, though historians still argue whether such speculation holds any water beyond myth and legend. Picture an underwater metropolis, buildings worn smooth by centuries of salt water, their spires jutting like skeletal fingers toward sunlight that barely penetrates. Fringe enthusiasts suggest that magnetic anomalies or energy fields could be remnants of these submerged civilizations, interfering with compasses, electronics, or even perception itself. You probably won't survive this, not physically, but in the sense that your mind is comfortably submerged in the silent imaginacies of what might lie beneath. Mainstream researchers, of course, are far less poetic, pointing to geology, shifting tectonics, and sunken reefs as far more probable explanations. There are reports of sonar anomalies, unidentified shapes detected below the hull, moving in ways that seem almost deliberate. Historians debate whether these were misread signals, schools of fish, or reflections from underwater formations. Yet the allure of a lost city persists in popular imagination. You imagine divers descending, light from their helmets cutting through greenish water, exploring corridors that hint at civilization but reveal only scattered artifacts and the echo of stories passed down through generations. Even abandoned piers, half-collapsed wrecks, or ancient stone structures can feed the fantasy, as if the triangle itself is nudging your mind toward the improbable. You trudge past this silent, submerged cityscape, feeling the gentle pull of legend mingling with history. You probably won't survive this, but only because imagining ruins under endless water tends to make the brain wander deliciously. The triangle is not just a surface mystery, it extends downward, drawing your mind into layers of earth, sand, and imagination, where currents conceal as much as they reveal. And as the underwater streets stretch away into shadow, you notice how naturally curiosity floats alongside fear, gliding hand in hand across the quiet, unseen depths. You resurface gently from thoughts of sunken cities, and now your mind drifts toward the living inhabitants of the triangle, the sharks, the squids, and the restless sea life that add their own flavor of mystery. The role of sharks and sea life in disappearances is subtle but fascinating. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your imagination is about to swim alongside enormous predators and strange, curious creatures of the deep. Historians and marine biologists still argue whether unusual animal behavior might account for some of the vanishings, or if it's simply another layer of the legend thickening over time. Picture the ocean glinting in sunlight, waves breaking gently, and just below, shadows glide, sharks circling, whales humming in the distance, jellyfish pulsating like underwater lanterns, all innocuous in their own right. But when combined with human error or sudden storms, they become part of the triangle's lore. Fringe enthusiasts claim that certain deep-sea creatures emit electromagnetic fields that interfere with navigation, causing compasses to spin and instruments to falter. You probably won't survive this, but not physically, only your mind might feel the tingling excitement of imagining a school of electric eels quietly influencing a crew's bearings. There are anecdotes of sailors seeing enormous squids wrapping around masts or feeling an inexplicable pressure in the water. Though most of these are likely exaggerations or misidentifications, historians debate the extent to which these stories shaped the early triangle narrative, suggesting that fear and rumor often amplified what were probably normal marine encounters. Yet, the quirkiest stories persist. And you can't help picturing a massive, gentle leviathan brushing against the hull, leaving only ripples as a signature of its presence. Even more mundane marine activity can create mysterious circumstances, swirling schools of fish, patches of unusually warm water, and deep-sea currents that behave unexpectedly can all confuse instruments and humans alike. You trudge along, picturing a ship's hull moving silently over a shifting underwater ecosystem, the crew none the wiser to what's stirring beneath. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your mind is now swimming with all manner of ocean life, but the experience is soft, hypnotic, and strangely comforting. The Bermuda Triangle isn't just a void of disappearance, it's a living, breathing habitat, quietly shaping its own narrative as it waits for the next curious traveler to drift into its stories. You drift back to the surface, where modern technology hums like a lullaby across the waves, and consider how jeeps, satellites, and sonar have changed our understanding of the Bermuda Triangle. Modern tracking and technology offer fascinating insights, yet sometimes even today's instruments fail in inexplicable ways. You probably won't survive this, but only in the sense that your mind is about to follow glitches, anomalies, and the quiet hum of electronics as they struggle with the ocean's whims. Historians still argue whether these technological failures are evidence of genuine mystery or simply human misinterpretation amplified by expectation. Imagine a research vessel gliding over turquoise waters, sonar screens painting the seabed in shifting shades of green and blue, instruments occasionally flicker for no apparent reason, radar echoes return strange blips, and Gibbs coordinates jitter subtly. Enough to make even experienced navigators pause. Fringe enthusiasts suggest that natural electromagnetic anomalies could interfere with satellites or devices, causing temporary disorientation or even minor panic. You probably won't survive this, mentally speaking. Because watching technology wobble in the hands of professionals creates the perfect cocktail of intrigue and gentle suspense, there are documented cases where ships' compasses suddenly swung wildly despite proximity to land, or autopilot systems inexplicably disengaged. Historians debate whether these events are simply the result of untested equipment, solar storms, or subtle oceanic currents, but the stories stick, adding layers of quiet unease. You picture the crew exchanging knowing glances, a soft tension lingering as instruments tick and hum. Almost as if the ocean itself is playing a slow, patient game with their senses. Even with satellites mapping the ocean floor in unprecedented detail, small anomalies remain, stubborn blips that refuse explanation. You trudge along the vessel's deck, the hum of engines and electronics blending with imagined whispers from waves below. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your mind is now entangled in a gentle dance between data, anecdote, and speculation. The triangle, it seems, hasn't vanished simply because of deeps. It has quietly adapted, shifting the mystery from disappearing ships to malfunctioning instruments. From lost compasses to stories that float effortlessly between fact and imagination. You ease further into the triangle's stories, now turning inward, to the human mind itself. Psychology of fear and myth-making takes center stage. Why are we so drawn to paranormal explanations when faced with uncertainty? You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your own imagination is about to be gently wrapped around whispers, legends, and the soft hum of collective storytelling. Historians still argue whether fascination with the triangle arises more from natural hazards or from society's endless appetite for mystery and drama. Picture yourself on a calm deck, the sun glinting off gentle waves. And notice how every small anomaly, compass twitch, strange light on the horizon, engine hiccup becomes magnified in memory. People remember what surprises them, what frightens them, and the Bermuda Triangle has an uncanny ability to make the mundane extraordinary. Fringe enthusiasts suggest that human consciousness itself might resonate with the triangle's energies, heightening perception and fear. You probably won't survive this, not physically, but mentally, as your imagination begins blending anecdote, history, and gentle paranoia into a soft tapestry of wonder. Media has also played a role. Books, newspapers, films, documentaries, sensationalized accounts transform minor misadventures into legendary disappearances, amplifying intrigue for generations. Historians debate whether these stories distort the truth or simply enrich the narrative. But either way, they leave an indelible mark. You imagine yourself reading accounts by lantern light, the words bending and twisting in rhythm with imagined waves, a cozy fear tickling the edges of your awareness. Even individual psychology contributes. Stress, fatigue, and expectation all amplify the perception of strangeness. You trudge along these mental currents, picturing sailors and pilots quietly wondering if their instruments are lying or if the ocean is playing a joke. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your curiosity is now firmly caught between rational thought and the gentle seduction of the unknown. The triangle's mystery is not just in water, wind, or technology. It resides in human minds, where fear, imagination, and myth converge softly, shaping legends that drift endlessly like flotsam across the ocean's surface. The modern era brings you to recent disappearances, cases that remind you the Bermuda Triangle is far from a relic of history. Recent disappearances, private yachts, small planes, and even research vessels continue to keep the legend alive. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your mind is about to wander across news headlines, missing persons reports, and the subtle hum of uncertainty that clings to every story. Historians still argue whether these 21st-century vanishings are unusual, or simply the predictable result of human error interacting with the triangle's natural hazards. Imagine a small sailboat drifting over calm waters one moment and caught in sudden fog or rogue currents the next. Gibbs signals intermittently drop, compasses falter, and radio chatter fades into static. Fringe enthusiasts delight in these modern anomalies, insisting that even satellites and drones cannot fully account for the area's persistent strangeness. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that visualizing these disappearances makes the skin tingle gently with anticipation and mild unease, the kind that's perfect for bedtime storytelling. There are tales of aircraft vanishing on routine flights, leaving investigators puzzled despite access to modern radar and satellite tracking. Historians debate whether these are truly inexplicable events or simply underreported accidents compounded by the triangle's reputation. You imagine the search and rescue teams combing over data, maps, and sonar readings, sometimes scratching their heads as patterns defy easy explanation. Even in an age of near-perfect technology, the triangle seems to resist full understanding, its legacy stubbornly intact. Some quirky modern accounts involve mysterious lights, sudden electrical failures, or even unusual wildlife behavior disrupting navigation. You trudge through these stories gently, imagining yourself on the deck of a research vessel, ears attuned to faint creaks and hums, eyes scanning the horizon for something that may or may not exist. You probably won't survive this, mentally speaking, because the mixture of modern science, anecdotal oddities, and lingering legend keeps the mind gently occupied. The Bermuda Triangle continues to collect stories, blending 21st-century technology with timeless mystery, quietly reminding us that some enigmas resist full explanation, and some tales are best left to drift in the imagination. You arrive at the final stretch, where the Bermuda Triangle's cultural impact and legacy shimmer just as vividly as its mysterious waters. Books, films, documentaries, and tourism have all turned this stretch of ocean into a kind of mythic playground. You probably won't survive this, mentally speaking, because now your imagination will fill with both fact and fiction, legends, and pop culture echoes. historians still argue whether the triangle's cultural prominence has exaggerated its actual danger, or if the fascination itself has become a kind of self-perpetuating legend. Picture the shelves of a bookstore, crowded with titles promising secrets of the Bermuda Triangle, alongside glossy tourist brochures urging a safe glimpse into mysterious waters. Fringe enthusiasts add their own layers: ghost ships, underwater bases, and even time portals. All woven seamlessly into popular storytelling. You probably won't survive this, not physically, but mentally, as your brain navigates the delicate balance between documented history and fanciful exaggeration. There are films where planes vanish mid-flight, novels describing underwater cities, and even video games letting you explore the ocean's hidden nooks, all testament to the triangle's enduring appeal. The tourism angle is quirky, and gentle cruises offer Bermuda Triangle adventures, complete with themed cocktails and guided lectures on disappearances. You can imagine yourself reclining on deck, sipping something tropical, eyes on the horizon, as the guide recounts Flight 19 or the USS Cyclops in soft, sleepy tones. Historians debate whether this fascination trivializes real maritime hazards or simply sustains a cultural narrative that connects us to history, curiosity, and the unknown. You also notice how the triangle inspires discussion, debate, and imagination even far from the Atlantic. Writers, teachers, and enthusiasts everywhere reference it, keeping stories alive with each retelling. You trudge through these cultural ripples, realizing that the Bermuda Triangle is no longer just a geographic location, it's a shared mental space, a canvas for curiosity, fear, and wonder. You probably won't survive this, but in the sense that the triangle quietly occupies your imagination, tugging at the edges of rational thought while letting your mind drift peacefully and endlessly. Its legacy is not just in vanished ships or planes, but in the gentle, persistent hum of stories carried across generations, floating as effortlessly as driftwood on the endless ocean. And now, as your mind drifts away from waves, compasses, and vanishing vessels, you can allow the pace to soften completely. Picture the triangle not as a threat, but as a vast, quiet expanse, its secrets dissolving into gentle ripples that lap at the edges of your thoughts. The sun sets softly on imagined decks, the last traces of light glinting off calm waters, and even the mysteries you've explored tonight begin to feel like gentle whispers rather than alarming enigmas. You probably won't survive this, in the sense that your mind is gradually floating into a serene, sleep-friendly haze, but that's exactly where we want it to go. Imagine waves folding over themselves, carrying echoes of history, legend, and imagination into an endless horizon. The stories of Flight 19, vanished ships, rogue waves, and mysterious lights all settle into the quiet rhythm of your breathing. The triangle no longer looms as a place of fear, it becomes a canvas for gentle curiosity, a soft puzzle that hums beneath the surface of awareness. Fringe tales, alien theories, time anomalies, even submerged cities, all of them fade like distant lanterns, twinkling faintly but no longer demanding attention. As your thoughts slow, allow the ocean of imagination to wash over you, carrying with it the soothing repetition of waves and whispers. You trudge gently across the deck of your mind, eyes heavy, ears attuned only to the soft background hum, feeling curiosity and wonder settle into a calm, even rhythm. The Bermuda Triangle, with all its history, lore, and speculation, becomes a lullaby of mystery rather than menace, and as you drift toward sleep, know that the stories remain floating gently in the distance, ready to return if ever curiosity stirs again.